What is a water pump? It's the heart of the cooling system. Just as the human heart pumps blood throughout the body, it is the water pump's job to circulate the coolant through the cooling system. An automotive engine has an impeller type of water pump. A belt drives the pump. Some systems use an accessory drive belt, and others use a timing belt. The pump constantly turns and creates flow in the system. How is it constructed? The water pump housing is typically made of cast iron or aluminum. Gates uses quality cast aluminum with no flashing and no worn tooling. Vehicle manufacturers are moving to aluminum to reduce vehicle weight. 6 reasons to go with Gates. Original equipment manufacturer materials and design. Pump cavity and impeller match OEM performance for proper coolant flow. Unitized bearings and seals give long service life. Precision ground surfaces for proper fit and sealing. New premium components. Limited lifetime warranty. Causes of water pump failure. Coolant contamination. Broken shaft or housing and bearing failure due to cracked or bent fan or pulleys incorrectly mounted or bent, belts too tight, overloading the bearing, defective fan clutch, weak hole seepage. How long do water pumps last? Most original equipment pumps typically last 60,000 miles or more. Keep an eye on things that can damage pump efficiency, including a defective automatic belt tensioner, which begins to oscillate excessively, sending impulses to the pump shaft. Vibrations can cause rapid bearing wear and premature failure. Replacing the automatic tensioner when you replace the pump is good preventive maintenance. Always check or replace the following parts when installing a new water pump: belts, tensioners and pulleys, hoses and clamps, radiator clamp, thermostat. Let's view a water pump replacement job from start to finish.
TSC, the service center, has been here for 14 years. We are a Ford specialty shop. We repair and service Ford products, Lincoln Mercury, cars, trucks, diesels. I've been doing this 32 years. Paul's been with me now for 6 years. Paul has approximately 15 years of automotive experience. With experience, you know what you can buy and what you cannot buy aftermarket. Belts and hoses, we purchased aftermarket. Stuff like most electrical stuff, we purchase OE. Water pumps, thermostats, things like that nature, we do purchase aftermarket. If we find a product that works properly and it's good.
First thing we're going to do is remove this jack handle, and that's going to clear up one of the bolts to get this coolant tank out of the way. And next thing we're going to do is break our fan and fan clutch loose, and then we'll be taking the belt off of it, and then we'll be removing the shroud, and the fan is a unit. Start rocking on the water pump.
Anytime you're ready, Paul.
Always be careful removing your radiator cap.
Light strip on through 2 map sensors because it came in, threw it out. Yep.
We've got our nitrate levels, which are in the pink, which is right around ideal. We've got our percentage of glycol, which is down in the brown, which tells us we're about 34 below zero, is what we're rated at. And our pH is right around between 9.5% and 10%.
They retroed the kit for this. Really? Yeah, it's a long.
Okay, we're going to use a recovery bucket to drain the radiator and cooling system. And there's a 19 millimeter plastic nut on the bottom of the radiator for draining. Total capacity is just over 8 gallons. We're going to actually drain out about 5 gallons. You don't want to go real crazy tight with these either. Just a little snug. Okay. We are filling the cooling system with water after we have added our descaling and cleaner. And right now we're letting it settle back down into the cooling system. And we're going to run the engine RPM at 1250 to 1500 RPM for 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll re-drain it and flush it with straight water. I like to flush it before I do the job, that way I get all the contaminants and junk out of the system before we're adding our new parts to it. Clear? Okay, we've started it and we're running it. Keep filling it till it's full. Okay, now that our system's full, I'm going to replace the cap. And we're going to go inside and make sure the heater's on high position. And we're going to run the engine RPM at 1250 to 1500 RPM for 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, this tool locks your clamp in place so you're able to move it around without too much effort. Now that we've gotten it broken loose, we're going to slide it down on the hose out of the way. And then with this tool, squeeze the handle back together and release the lock on it. And that'll release your clamp down here. This is the same style clamp we're going to take off of the heater hose down here that is down hooked to the water pump, which I will do now. Okay, we're going to release our tool, which just goes down around the hose. You have to be careful not to cut your hose. Just work it back and forth while gently pulling up. This hose is the port we're going to flush the block through. We're going to reuse our clamp that we previously took off to hold our heater hose onto our flushing hose. And we're going to start flushing. Yeah, just looking at the tint to the water. It's got a slight tint of green left in it. Here we're blocking off the water outlet to the water pump to flush out our radiator and our fill bottle. And they do make adapter fittings that you can screw your garden hose right into. Okay, now we're going to remove this clamp and pull our flushing hose out of the way. And now we're just going to let all our water drain back out. And we can leave this hose off because we'll be removing it later to do the water pump operation. First thing we're going to do is take this jack handle out of the way. And that frees up your access to this bolt right here for the tank that we're going to be removing next. Next thing we're going to do is take this clamp off, coolant bottle. Just run this down out of your way. Then we're going to remove this hose. Okay, remove the bolt here and the two that are down here on the coolant bottle. These are 8mm. My hose is cut there. Okay, we've got two longer bolts that go in the bottom of the tank, and then we've got one short one that goes up here in the top, and this short one is it's short for a reason, so you don't screw it down through the radiator. Okay, next we're going to lift this bottle up, and as you can see there's a clamp down here on the bottom of the bottle. We're going to take that off with our special clamp tool. Okay, we're going to install our special clamp tool on this clamp here. Just going to squeeze this tool close until it goes over the lock mechanism where my thumb's at. And we're going to pull the clamp down and release the tool. Okay, and then what we're going to do is grab onto the hose and twist it while pulling up lightly on the bottle. Okay. What we're going to do is loosen this fan clutch, which actually has the water pump is threaded and the fan clutch threads onto it. You'll notice on your fan shroud that it says right hand thread, which is your standard thread. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. This application with the Powerstroke diesel, they're all right hand thread. We're going to use this special tool, which is hooked to an air hammer, and it's a 1 7/8 fitting. And we're going to air hammer it loose onto the nut of the fan clutch, and we're going to hit it with some air. So, and you can see it just broke loose because you can spin the nut while the water pump stays stationary. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is relieve our belt tension using just a regular 1/2-inch ratchet. We'll put it into the tensioner here. It's got a hole that's built into it. Basically, you're going to pull up and release the belt, and then set your tensioner back down. We're just going to slide the clamp down out of our way. And we'll remove our hose, and we're just going to tuck it out of the way for right now. Okay, and that opens up the whole section of the fan shroud that we need to have out of the way here. Okay, and pull this hose out of the way. And just kind of tuck it into your holder where your jack handle was. So we're going to remove these two bolts holding the top shroud in. That's the only thing physically bolting our shroud in place. We have two clips in the bottom, which we'll be able to see here in a minute. Next thing I'm going to do, while pushing this back, is hold on to this fan so you don't drop it in the radiator. And then we're going to turn our water pump pulley clockwise. We just need to be careful when we're lifting out our shroud that we don't bang the fan into the radiator. Okay, now we'll take our fan out of the way here, and now we can remove our fan shroud. Okay, now we can see the two tabs that snap into the bottom of the radiator. You want to make sure when you're going back together that you do get these in place. Then take our belt off, and I wait to do it now because now your fan and shroud and everything is out of the way. You don't have to fight around that to get to your belt. What we're going to do now is take this tensioner assembly out since we're replacing it, and break it loose. And if you notice on the back side, we have two nubs sticking out of it. And if you notice down on the bracketry, we have two holes drilled out of the bracket. We've got our centering hole that's threaded. So these need to sit inside the holes down here. Okay, what we're going to do is use an air ratchet for these 10mm bolts. We're just going to hold on to the pulley and break them loose. Okay. Remove our water pump pulley. Next thing we're going to do is unplug the camshaft position sensor. So unplug that, pull it out of the way. Just going to break that loose so we can get the wire connector out of there, out of our way. Okay, next thing we're going to do is unplug this connector. It's got a squeeze point for your thumb in the front here. Squeeze it, pull it off. Because we are replacing this hose, we're going to go ahead and cut this off of here, because these are notoriously stuck on there, and you'll spend half the afternoon trying to gingerly take it off of there. And using a pick tool, we're going to break it loose off of there. And we're just going to lift that out of there. Now what we're going to do is take our lower hose off. Loosen our clamp up and just gently pull this hose. Next clamp we're going to take loose is the clamp on the inlet to the water pump. Okay, I'm going to leave the tool on that one. Okay, we're leaving this clamp clamped because of the overall diameter when it unloads is too big for this tool, and you end up having to use a pair of pliers. So we'll just leave this clamped for right now, and this will be the first one we put back on. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take the mounting bolts out of the water pump and remove the water pump. Right, now this bolt here is a little bit longer than the other ones I've just taken out. This is actually one of the bolts going into the front cover, which is quite a bit longer. And then you've got 1, 2, and 3 bolts here that are going clear through into your cover also. All the rest of these just go right to the edge of the cover. These two top ones, we're just going to break them loose and leave them there for right now. You'll notice here, these 3 bolts on the right side are even longer than the one on the left. Okay, and all 3 of these bolts on the right hand side are the same length. Now the reason we left these 2 top bolts in, because we're going to give that a little pull like that to release our water pump. Take our last 2 bolts, and we'll remove the water pump. Just going to take this O-ring and pull it off. Okay, we're going to use a real mild rubber cleaning disc. I prefer these over the abrasive discs. They won't scratch up your housing here. Just need to touch up these real lightly, get the corrosion and build up off of the front cover so our new O-ring will seal. Okay, everything there looks good. First thing we're going to do is take this thermostat housing off. Want 3 8mm bolts. Once we get that off and out of our way, we're going to remove this coolant temperature sensor, and then we're going to be removing this heater outlet pipe. Okay, we're going to inspect this cover, make sure we don't have any major pitting going on in our sealing surface here. This one looks okay. So we'll clean this up a little bit, obviously while wearing safety glasses. We're just looking for a nice smooth surface here on this raised lip. We're going to clean up our area where the hose goes on. So we're looking for. Just set this aside for right now. And you don't really have to take this out of here, but there's the O-ring for it, obviously. Here's your thermostat. Okay, the next piece we're going to take off is this heater outlet pipe here, which is usually pretty stubborn. You can see there's a O-ring on here already. And really this O-ring works better than replacing with a new one unless you're totally torn up. This has a nice taper on it, and we'll use a little silicone to put that on later. Just kind of wipe it off for now. Set it aside. Next piece we're going to remove is this engine coolant temperature sensor, which isn't nearly as tough as the outlet pipe to remove. Okay, it's our new pump. Do a quick test fit, make sure that our fittings fit in there. And we're good to go there. We're just going to Teflon tape the engine coolant temperature sensor. It is a tapered pipe thread style sensor. And we'll tighten this down with our 3/4 inch wrench. And we're going to screw this into the fitting. And give it a little snug. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is put our thermostat in. We'll set our thermostat in there. New O-ring, thermostat O-ring, just sets down in there. Now if you look closely, you notice there's real fine pitting in this housing, so what we're going to do is add a real thin bead of silicone here that's just going to fill up the gaps where the pits are, and it'll give you a nice long-lasting seal here. smooth this out a little bit so we don't have any excess. We don't want that floating around in our cooling system. Okay, and we're going to take our 3 bolts that we took out earlier and set them back in. And we'll run these down by hand. This is important to do this by hand because if you use a gun to suck these down, what will happen is your O-ring will squeeze out on one side and you'll have a leak. You just want to work your way around with them. And then to make things a little easier, we're going to set this on its side and give these a little, one last little snug. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install the O-ring that fits on the back side of this, and we're ready to install it. Okay. Okay, we're going to use a bolt as a guide here. And that should ensure that our gasket stays in place, making sure that none of your wiring has gotten tucked in there. Then the shorter of our longer bolts we're going to put here in this left side. And this is going through the case. And then our long 3 go on the right side here. Now we're going to use an air ratchet and just snug these up real gently. I like to start at the bottom. And with a hand ratchet, we'll tighten those up. So we're going to install our old clip back into the water pump housing. Okay, we're going to install our wiring for our camshaft position sensor. Put our wire back in its guide here. Electrical connector for the ECT. And the next thing we'll install is our heater hose. Just push that down until it stops. Okay. Okay. We're going to install our bolt in the centering hole. And then there's an O-ring that we're going to set over the threads. And that's just going to help us keep from losing our bolt when we're installing it. Okay. Okay, and we'll snug that up with a hand ratchet. Okay. Then we're going to give it a quick test drive. Make sure it's working properly. Next, we're going to install our pulley. Once you've got these all started, you can kind of snug them down by hand. Use a small impact gun, taking care not to hit the radiator. Ready? Make sure that's seated up in there all the way. And let the clamp go. Okay. We were looking at matching up the length of the old belt to the new belt. So we're going to install our new belt partially on. We're going to leave the tension off of it for right now. Okay. And we're just going to leave this loose for right now so we can spin our fan clutch back on here in a minute. Set that right there. Okay, now we're going to turn our water pump pulley counterclockwise to thread this back on here. And we're started. So now we need to make sure that our tabs on the bottom of the shroud latch into their holding points, and install your 2 bolts that we took out here. Now what we can do is put the tension on our belt. Again, double checking that all our pulleys are aligned. And then spin your fan, because you still have it loose. We're going to use our tool that we used to loosen that to tighten it back up. Okay. Okay, what we're going to use on the thermostat housing for the upper hose is an Indian head shellac. And basically what we're using this for is just a kind of a secondary seal for the pitting that occurs on the thermostat housing. I'm just going to put a thin coat in there. And I prefer not to use that on a plastic tank radiator because you'll tend to break them when you take them off. Make sure you have no kinks or binds in your hose, that you're fully seated down there. And reinstall your clamps. Just make sure you're past the rib of the radiator. And same thing on the other clamp. Pull up on this hose, push the bottle back into position, and we're going to put our clamp up in place. I can't see, so
Down a little bit, Paul. Right there.
sometimes this is helpful to have a third hand helping you. And then we're going to set our bottle in place. You're going to remember to put your short bolt in the top because you don't want to puncture your radiator. And the 2 longer bolts down on the bottom. Okay. Next thing, we're going to put this hose back on. I'll reinstall our lug wrench. Okay, this is for vacuuming down the cooling system. And it cuts down on your time for purging the air out of the system. And just stick a rag over that too. We'll pull this down into a nice vacuum. You can see all your hoses starting to suck flat. Okay, we're going to suck this down to 25 inches of vacuum. What we're going to do is open this valve here, and it's going to start filling our system up. Watching our hose for any air. The system, when it's totally completely empty, takes just over 8 gallons, and we have roughly 4 gallons in the block right now from flushing it of water, so we're going to add 4 gallons of straight antifreeze to it. Sometimes on these larger capacity systems you've got to shut your valve off and let it pull it back down into the system. As you can see, your hoses are still collapsed. We still have a vacuum under the system, so we still know we've got more to add to it. Now we're going to relieve the vacuum in the tank here.
All the way out.
Add our diesel additive. It's a chemical treatment for diesel engines. Now all we need to do is top it off. This is a mix, 50-50 mix. We're going to install a new radiator cap. What we're doing right now, we've got the heater turned on high and we're double checking for leaks. Circulating the cooling system for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Make sure we don't develop any kind of leaks or anything. Then we'll take it out and test drive it. Bring it back in, make sure that the cooling system is still full and that we haven't developed any leaks. And if not, we're all set to go.
Thank you for viewing this program. These real-life tips and techniques, when combined with top-quality new parts, will result in happy customers and satisfaction from a job well done.